Right off the heels of Call of Duty 1's success, Activision and Infinity Ward had their sights on the second installment in what has since become one of the most profitable and longest-running gaming franchises in the world. So came Call of Duty 2, also sometimes referred to as Call of Duty 2 Deviants in Eastern Europe territories, though there's no mention of that on Wikipedia.
Basic comrades. If you wish to survive, you will do exactly as I say. Now, walk over to that table and pick up those weapons.
COD 2 has a very interesting origin story. After developing Medal of Honor Allied Assault and Call of Duty 1, Infinity Ward was done on the World War II era. They already made two vastly praised and transcending games, and wanted to move on to a more modern-day setting, Modern Warfare instead of Call of Duty 2.
Good news first, the world's in great shape. We've got a civil war.
Activision was not convinced though. The era of World War II shooter was in full swing at the time and didn't want to take risk. Call of Duty 1 proved to be very successful and they wanted to follow it up with a similar game. Xbox 360 was right around the corner, a brand new console generation and player base which Infinity Ward was dying to be a part of. Activision would provide them with development kits under the condition that their next game would be World War II, and so it was. They came to an agreement and started the development of this cult classic. Call of Duty 2 was developed in around 2 years and came out on October 25, 2005, ready for the launch of Xbox 360, which propelled the franchise onto the mainstream. But how is Call of Duty 2 nowadays? Does the campaign still hold up? Let's crack this bad boy open and see for ourselves. I'm gonna compare COD 2 obviously to Call of Duty 1 and United Offensive, but also to Call of Duty 3, as that was a launch title for the PS3 developed by Treyarch and came out only a year later, and it's basically an entirely different game. It doesn't build up on COD 2's engine or assets, it's its own thing completely, so I think some comparisons would be fair.
These are potatoes, Comrade Commissar! Why are we using potatoes instead of real grenades?
Because real grenades are valuable. In fact, they are worth a lot more than you are.
Oh, of course, Comrade Commissar, my mistake.
We start off with the Russian campaign in this one, and right off the bat we are treated to vastly improved visuals. This training level is iconic for the makeshift setup and some funny shenanigans. After getting a hang of the basics, the game doesn't waste time with any slow sections, and pushes us straight into the chaotic action. Chaotic action that doesn't ever stop for the entirety of Call of Duty 2's 4 to 5 hour campaign. This game doesn't have any special ops missions, no stealth or infiltration levels, just pure non-stop action, which is probably the theme they were going for. Infinity Ward was dead set to improve on the criticism of the first game, which was mostly that the later parts of the game felt rushed and didn't have the same big battle atmosphere that the first half of the game had. So they cranked it up to 11 in Call of Duty 2. You kill way more enemies than in COD 1. They keep respawning and pushing you from all sides. There's no time to rest here. You need to keep advancing in the level in order to stop the spawning of the waves. And that can get a bit tiresome, to be honest. There aren't many opportunities for you to hang back and pick off the resistance with your bolt action or sniper rifle. As soon as you kill 5 dudes from the same spot, 5 new ones will spawn and take up their positions. So you need to charge every building, every position you see. Not only that, but if you stay too long in one spot, you'll get lambasted with grenades. The game leaves you no choice but to keep rushing and moving forward.
Hell, we can't sit here like this! We gotta move! We gotta move, Lieutenant! Let's go get the bastards! What are you doing?
The gameplay loop is quite different than in the previous game, which also had hordes of enemies, but they won't respawn so relentlessly. And here comes my biggest gripe with Call of Duty 2, and actually most newer Call of Duties as well, and that's the regenerating health. This to me takes out a pretty important part of the gameplay loop, which is managing your health. Say you're on 75 health and you see a first aid kit which regenerates 50 health points. Do you pick it up and waste half of it, or progress the level a bit longer and then come back for it when your health is lower? You also won't have those adrenaline pumping sections where you're like on 1 hit point left and need to reach the next checkpoint. Here, you can just hide behind a box for 5 seconds and you're good to go. There's also way too many checkpoints in this game. If you die, it's no big deal. You'll just respawn like 30 seconds back.
Bastard! That lucky bastard's lost his leg! Well, at least he's out of this bleeding desert!
What I really liked about Call of Duty 2 is the soundtrack. It's absolutely beautiful and present most of the game's runtime. I especially liked how they incorporated the triumphant soundtracks when you beat a mission to continue in the mission end screen. For some of these I didn't want to click next mission because the music was so good. And also great are the graphics. Well, for 2005 at least. The game's lighting is vastly improved, along of course with more detailed models and more geometry in missions. The game uses this weird noisy filter on textures, which gives them a very sharp look, or at least it fakes it. If you look closer, you'd see that the textures aren't as sharp as they appear, but it's a very cool hack. Also, there's real-time shadows here, which look a bit janky, but still, in a time where real-time shadows weren't really a thing, this is quite impressive. The materials don't have any specular maps or anything like that, so for metals they use this bluish gray color, which looks super cool and fakes the metallic properties very well. The explosions and smoke effects are absolutely the standouts here. The grenade and bullet impacts paint a visceral scene in all gunfights, and even when you clear an area out, there will still be some leftover smoke and mist, giving this eerie look. There's no brown color filter or excessive bloom like most of the games of the 360 and PlayStation 3 era. The colors are beautiful and still look good. Overall, this is a very pretty game, which graphics age pretty nicely. The game's campaign progression is split into 3 parts, just like Call of Duty 1, except here you play the Soviet campaign first, then the Brits and finally the Americans. The Soviet campaign takes place in the winter of Moscow and Stalingrad. The snowy urban areas look phenomenal, along with snow effects, the appropriate uniforms, and some neat idle animations. The breeding of NPCs produces this mist effect appropriate for such cold condition, which is a very nice touch. The levels can be a bit too similar looking, and looking back on the Soviet campaign, it's all just a blur of these urban areas and wrecked buildings. Which can also be said for the British campaign which follows. It's set in Africa, mostly Egypt, Libya and Tunisia. While the scenery and graphics are once again spectacular, the levels themselves are quite mediocre and don't really stand out that much. The objectives are also very uninspired. I can't remember how many times I had to take out a flag gun crew or plant explosives on a tank. Apart from some small amount of unique objectives, you're doing pretty much the same thing except in different locations. And after 15 or so missions into the game, I was getting a bit tired and bored. Compared to United Offensive, this all seemed very uninspired and padded out. I wish there were more cool set pieces, like maybe blowing up bridges, some more last stand missions, more weapons and placements to use, maybe a car level like in Call of Duty 3, or an airplane level like in United Offensive. Minus the one armor card section, which was pretty cool I have to say, there's really nothing much. There's 2 tank levels in the middle of the Africa campaign, but you're given a very weak tank, a Crusader, and it's really nothing special, you just destroy 25 or so Panzer IIIs and some flag guns. This could have been much better, like maybe give us a boss fight with a Tiger tank, or actually model the mission around taking out and capturing the historic Tiger 131 for example. Call of Duty 3 did this actually. You had this entire storyline for the tank missions there, where you end up killing a legendary King Tiger and its commander, which was kind of historically accurate. But here, it's just a cookie-cutter tank mission, same as in Call of Duty 1.
Foot on that pedal and push! Right, sir! Hang on! What on earth are you trying to do, McGregor? It's not that hard! Just turn the wheel in the direction you want to go! Oh, thank you, sir! Yeah, it's very helpful! It's very clear now!
The saving grace of these levels is the fact that there are always some allies with you, with some dialogues and chatter. The exchanges between Captain Price and Private McGregor can be hilarious. A big talking point about Call of Duty 2 when it came out was the fact that there's so much talking going on and most of it's dynamic. The NPCs will react to the enemy's actions and will call out where they are and what they're doing. If there's enemies near an important object or part of the map, you will hear the allies call out that spot of the map. Pretty cool stuff. There's never any silence. It's all constant shouting from both the ally side as well as the Germans. There's a ton of voice lines, so you never get tired of hearing the same thing over and over again. But still, at this point I was kind of bored and a bit disappointed. Call of Duty 2 I had in very good memory, so this was a bit shocking to me how bare bones it was. It all changed for a brief moment though when I reached the American campaign. D-Day in Call of Duty 2 is awesome. The setting here is point to hawk, and there's really nothing quite like it, even 20 years later. The opening set piece where you storm the cliffs and climb up the ropes is absolutely iconic and very cinematic. The graphics, the scenery, sound effects, level design, it all came together perfectly for this mission to produce quite possibly the best part in the entire franchise up until this point. This was exactly as I remembered it, and it's exhilarating even today. The mission is to get up the cliffs and take out the coastal guns, which are gone. They're not here.
What? The guns aren't here! The crowds must have moved them someplace else! Well, hell, keep moving!
You fight your way through the trenches and the Normandy's bocage landscape and finally find the guns and secure the point. The following mission is the defense of the area from German counterattack, which is also very good. The entire map is reused, but now you're retracing your steps back as you retreat from the advancing German troops. It all ends with reinforcements coming in to drive the Germans back and save you and your ranger buddies. Very nice. This is where Call of Duty 2 shines. But I understand, they couldn't just redo all the most iconic European theater battles, since they did many of those already in the previous game. But D-Day in this game was epic. Following is a mission where you need to take a German-occupied village and hold it again from a counterattack. This is where the game goes back to its previous formula. Here's the village, multiple houses to clear that are actually placed in a way for you to sequentially complete them, so there's no point in deviating from that path. From here, you're back in charge of Sergeant Davies and do one more part with the Brits, now also in France. All of these missions are very forgettable and pretty much follow the same structure as all the ones before. At least Normandy is a nice change of scenery from the desert. Next up is the battle for Hill 400, which kind of followed in the footsteps of the D-Day missions. You first need to storm and take the hill, and then in the second level hold it from a counterattack. This was basically the same as D-Day, but with a different area, and it was quite good. I loved this. The game was getting a bit easy at this time though, even on the hardened difficulty, as I've grown accustomed to the gameplay loop, the enemy AI, and all the weapons basically. So I bumped it up to Veteran, and enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm not sure if I would have enjoyed the entire game of Veteran, but since the game doesn't give you more difficult levels and objectives towards the end, I feel like you need to force that challenge with a higher difficulty. Which leads me to the final mission of the game, which doesn't even feel like a final level. It's a generic European town, where once again you need to take out the Flak 88 crews and at the end take out 2 Tiger tanks with explosives, and they don't really possess any huge threat to you. It ends on a bit of a stinker. I wish they cranked up the difficulty of Hill 400 and made that the final mission. It would have worked much better.
Guardian Aegis, McCloskey. P-51 Mustangs, and not a blessed moment too soon. Great job, guys.
So yeah, Call of Duty 2 is weird, man. Structurally, the game doesn't even have a logical progression in any way. The enemies you fight at the start of the game are the same one as in the final parts. The guns you use are always the same, and also the enemies' guns. The objectives in the Soviet campaign are the same as in the American campaign at the end. You could easily switch up the order of the missions and the game would be no different. There's also no story or any drama whatsoever. No character progression, nothing. So you don't really care about any of these friendly NPCs whatsoever. The voice actor for Captain Price is amazing though, and McGregor is hilarious. Even Sergeant Randall is voiced by none other than Nolan North, the guy for games with good stories. I don't think I can say I'd rate Call of Duty 2 above United Offensive or even Call of Duty 3. Now bear in mind we're speaking only of the campaign here, but it still is a clear upgrade from Call of Duty 1 in almost every aspect. I love the graphics, the music, the general gunplay, the guns felt really good. I just wish the missions and the objectives had more variety. And of course, my very personal nitpick, I really don't like regenerating health. I get it for multiplayer purposes, but I feel like for single player it really adds nothing to the gameplay loop. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say you can really tell Infinity Ward did not want to make this game. I'm glad it sold well though, as Activision would finally greenlight their Modern Warfare project, which 2 years later changed the gaming landscape forever. But still, Call of Duty 2 is a respectable follow-up to a beloved first game.
Very good, comrade.
Thank you so much for watching. Hit that bell, subscribe, come hang out on the live stream. Check out my Call of Duty 1 and Call of Duty 3 reviews for that extra nostalgia. And yeah, check the description for some more ways to support the channel. Till next time, see ya.